Okay, good morning everyone. We'll just wait a couple more minutes, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes, just while we've got some more students joining the call. So hopefully you can see our lovely panelists here today. We've got their details on screen for you to be having a look at while you wait, and we'll start properly in 1 or 2 minutes. Hi to everyone still joining the call. You can see lots of students coming in. Hello, welcome. We're going to get started in a few minutes. I can see a few more of you logging on, so that's great. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Looks like we've just got our final panelist joining, but I'll just do some opening remarks while we're getting set up. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Nice to see so many students joining us on the call. So thank you for taking the time out to come along, and just wanted to say congratulations really. Be really proud of yourself that you've come along today, because you know you're already a step above and beyond what other students are committing to do to explore their career options. So that's, you know, really, really good, and you should be really proud of yourself. This is your opportunity to really find out more about consultancy as a sector, and you can ask alumni questions today. So this is a really invaluable opportunity to meet different alumni working in a variety of consultancy roles and ask them anything that you might be curious about. We will be reading your questions as we go along and directing them to the alumni. There's a handout available today in the handout section, so you'll be able to download that, find out more about our alumni, and get in touch with them after the event if you would like to do so. We are also recording today's event, and we will be putting this on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So if you do want to replay anything, or if your internet drops out and you miss a part of the talk, it will definitely be available for you to have a listen to afterwards. So my name's Kim, I work here at the University of Manchester's Careers Service, and as I'm sure you're aware, all our services at the moment are online. So if you do require any additional support following today's meeting, perhaps you want to get a CV reviewed, perhaps you want to have a guidance appointment to talk through any questions that you have about getting into the industry with a careers consultant, then that's something that you're more than welcome to do. We've got lots of different events going on, so the best place to look is Careers Link to check out all the events and vacancies. So I'm going to pass on to my colleague Emma Routh, who's going to explain a little bit more about how the event's going to work today.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Thanks ever so much for coming, everybody. I'm Emma from the Alumni Relations team, and me and my colleagues, we run a number of events like this throughout semester 1 and 2, which help students connect with alumni who work in various sectors or perhaps have studied a particular degree. And when you graduate, you'll become part of the alumni community, and maybe you'll want to come back and volunteer for one of these sessions yourself, and we'll be very happy to have you do that. So we have some fantastic alumni with us today who have volunteered their time to come and share their experience of working in consulting with you this afternoon. In a minute, I'm going to ask our alumni panelists to introduce themselves with their name, what they studied at Manchester and what they are doing now. And if once they've done their introductions, I'll ask them all an opening question, and then we'll go to student questions. So if you have a question for either the whole panel or one of our alum in particular, ask it in the chat box, and then Kim's going to be looking at those questions in the background and sending them to me. If you've got a question for an alum in particular, please say their name along with your question so I can make sure I direct it to the right person. If we get so many questions that we can't cover them all today in the hour, our alumni volunteers have kindly offered said that you can connect with them on LinkedIn after, or in Peter's case, he's given his email address. So if you do have any questions that we don't get time to get to today, you can ask them after the session, either by connecting with alum afterwards. Okay, so I think Davina is still trying to connect to video, so I'll ask her to introduce herself last. Oh, great.
Sorry,
hi, Davina.
Yeah,
no problem.
My webcam for some reason isn't working, so rather than hold up the session, if everybody's happy to proceed, I am as well. Sorry about that. It just
okay, no problem.
To the, to the technologist.
Well, as you're speaking first, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure, why not? Hi, everybody. My name is Davina Rai. I attended the University of Manchester. I graduated. Well, been at Accenture for a year now, so my maths isn't too great. I graduated last year. I studied neuroscience while I was at Manchester, and I also completed my master's specialising in natural enhancement of memory. And yeah, like I said, once I graduated from the University of Manchester, I went on to work for Accenture, and I actually just had my 1-year anniversary yesterday. So lovely to meet you all.
Oh, great. Thanks, Davina. I'll go to Aishwarya next, please.
Sure. So my name is Aishwarya, and I studied. Can you hear me?
Yes, can now, yeah.
So I studied biomaterial science and tissue engineering at Manchester and graduated 2 years ago. So currently work at LEK Consulting, and I'm a life sciences strategy consultant. And yeah, so ask away if you have any questions about strategy in particular. I'd be very happy to answer.
Great, thanks. I'll go to Peter next.
Hello, I'm Peter Burch. I did my PhD at Manchester looking at early medieval English kingship. I graduated in 2016 and joined Arcadis on their graduate scheme, and I've been a consultant project manager with them for the last 4.5 years or so, doing various positions. For those who don't know, Arcadis is a design and engineering firm, so I've done a lot in the built environment.
That's great, thanks. I go to Jenny. Oh, Jenny, we can't hear you. Just no, still can't hear you, I'm afraid. Just let me have a oh, I can see microphone going on and off. There you go. Great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry. So my name's Jenny. I was at Manchester between 2010 and 2014. I studied physiology with industrial experience and worked at GSK for a year in Stevenage. I now work at Good Business. I joined 5 years ago. I'm currently a partner, and Good Business is a social impact and sustainability strategy consultancy. So we work with companies and charities on their sustainability strategies and social impact programs.
Great, thanks, Jenny. Arushi, do you want to go next?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Arushi. I'm a business change consultant at Agilicis London. I moved to the UK as an international student at the University of Manchester. I studied mechanical engineering, graduated about 3 years ago, and then, yes, got a job in Agilicis as a consultant. That's me.
Great. And Shrishti, do you want to go next?
Yep. Hi, I'm Shrishti. I did IT management for business at the University of Manchester, graduating last year. Did an industrial placement with Procter & Gamble, so up north in Newcastle, working on their consumer websites, and I now work in technology consulting at Deloitte, so looking at some of their more enterprise applications, transformation programs for clients.
Great, thanks everyone. So just to kick things off, as consulting is a really broad field and you all have such different roles, I'm going to ask this to each of the panelists. Could you start by telling us a little bit about your role and the responsibilities you have on a day-to-day basis? I'll go to Shrishti for that one to start. Okay.
Yep. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm currently on a long-term engagement with a client company. We're advising them on how to move from an old customized system that they have to SAP system, which is more for supply chain, purchasing, etc. It's an enterprise application, and on a day-to-day basis, I'll be involved in conversation with the clients on what their processes are at the moment, how that will map on to when they implement the new system. So creating all sorts of user requirements, process flows, understanding client needs and how that will translate into real world. And it's a lot to do with knowing your technology, but also knowing how to handle the client. So what's possible and what's not possible. So doing a lot of that stakeholder management on a day-to-day basis as well.
Great, thanks. Arushi, do you want to go next?
Yep. So I predominantly work with public sector clients, and before lockdown, every Monday we'd fly out to client site and be there for about 3 to 4 days. But things have changed now because obviously everyone is in lockdown, and there's more encouragement to work remotely. So what my job is day to day is depending on the project, the starting point is always trying to understand what the client is looking for, what their requirements are. So the first phase of the project, I'm usually interviewing clients, seeing what they need, what they require, what their issues and pain points are. And then based on what data we've collected, I'm able to analyze and develop solutions. It could be digital solutions, or it might be just change in their processes or the way they do things, because sometimes the things they've been doing are really old process and needs to be developed and change with how the world is changing. So yeah, develop those solutions and give them recommendations, and then eventually with whatever they're happy with, we go into implementing it, whether it's digital or just changing their process. So that's me.
Thank you. Jenny, do you want to go next?
Sure. So Good Business is a consultancy that specializes in sustainability and social impact. So I joined as a junior consultant, and over the last 5 years sort of worked my way up. So my role has changed quite a lot in that time. And generally, the projects that we work on are around making the business case to help particularly companies, but also charities address create strategies that address climate change and inequality. So either in making sure their supply chain, manufacturing, distribution processes are aligned with like the net zero 2050 targets or whatever the latest science is recommending, but also making sure that the products and services are available to as many people as possible, so addressing sort of the systemic inequalities that exist in today's society, and trying to show them the business argument that they can increase their profits if they make their products or business services more accessible to more people.
Great, thanks. Peter, over to you.
Thank you. So my role is really quite varied. I'm involved in a couple of projects at the moment which are quite different. So one, I'm providing, I've helped set up, figure out what's needed, and then run a weekly reporting system for an ongoing legal case for one of our clients. So a regular repeat weekly task. Today's actually reporting day, so I've got a whole series of one-to-ones with key people, then I'll churn out the report at the end of the day. But I'm also involved in a couple of highways projects which are much larger, and the work is much different, as you'd expect. So my focus there is on, because they're in the early stages, setting up processes, defining how the client can work or needs to work to succeed, and making sure that all the key meetings, all the governance, all the tools that they need to succeed are in place, and then managing those through the program.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Aishwarya, do you want to go next?
Oh, yeah. So at LEK, we are strategy consultants, as I mentioned, and I work in the life sciences practice. So which means that my clients are pharmaceutical companies, biotechs, that sort of thing. And in terms of size, they can range from anything from a startup to big pharma. And I think how we differ from some other consulting firms is that our projects tend to be quite short. So 3 to 5 weeks is a typical length of a project, and which means that you get a lot of different, lots of experience in a short span of time. And clients come to us to solve business problems. So for example, it could be something like they are a vaccine manufacturer and now they're thinking of expanding in developing a COVID vaccine, or they are based in the UK, but they're thinking of expanding to a different country, and they want our advice on how they should do this and how much revenue they should expect from their products in those countries, that sort of thing. We also often overlap with finance in that we work on mergers and acquisitions. So that's also pretty interesting. That's the biggest chunk of what we do, strategy and finance and due diligence on mergers and acquisitions.
Great, thanks. And Davina?
Hi, so I primarily operate in the strategy and consulting sector of Accenture. I don't know if anybody's had a chance, maybe has looked into Accenture before, but it is a very large firm and covers a wide range of different functionalities and different sectors. So along with the strategy and consulting, there's more, if you're more of a techie person, we have developers and more technically inclined people working for us as well. But the strategy and consulting sector is primarily concerned with working with clients to understand their vision of what their aims are for the future, plan for that. And as an AI and technology consulting firm, we're very much focused on sort of implementing new disruptive technologies, artificial intelligence, to really deliver lasting change to companies and help them realize their full functionality and be bold with their visions and achieve true AI-powered transformation. So I operate within the financial services sector, but as I mentioned, there's a lot of different sectors that Accenture can operate in. So there's products, the public services, etc.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, everyone, so we'll start to get some student questions through. So one student has asked a question for Shrishti about if she has any application tips for Deloitte Spring Week, but perhaps if any of the other panelists also did Spring Weeks or internships and might want to also share their experiences of the application process. So I'll start with Shrishti, and then if anybody else has got anything they'd like to add, feel free to jump in afterwards.
Yep. So I think the application process for Deloitte Spring Week is similar to what they ask for in terms of internships and industrial placements, etc. I think the key point to get across is on some of the results you've brought in from some of the experience you've had. So it doesn't have to be something like, you know, you've done an internship before, or just a project you've worked on in a school module, and you know you did great in that, and you made a difference by working in a team. So Deloitte is really looking for what you can offer. So if you can highlight some of those key skills, a good one is always showing that you know how to adapt to technology and the changing needs, and you're very sensitive to listening to what the client wants. You know, those kind of skills, if you can portray in some shape or form in your application, that'd be good. And from my personal experience, going through the application process at Deloitte, it's quite it can be I know as an applicant you feel quite scared, but actually it was quite friendly as a process, and everyone's really nice, so I wouldn't be too worried.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any experience of any internships you did, or any spring week placements? No? Okay, so move on. Oh, sorry.
If I could just jump in, I actually didn't do an internship, and I am sort of responsible for recruitment at Good Business. So just to say that any work experience is good experience, and even if your preferred internship isn't open for applications this year, because it's going to be a really challenging year to do that, any work experience that you can therefore translate into your future applications will be worthwhile. So I wouldn't give up hope if you can't get your dream experience this year, but anything will be better than nothing.
Oh, that's really good, especially for now, isn't it?
If I may add,
yeah.
I think I found doing internships quite valuable because so I was an engineering student. I did all my internships in my three years in engineering, and realized that it wasn't something I wanted to do, you know, in my career, which is how it made me realize that I wanted to switch to something else, and came across consulting, which I really enjoy. So in that way as well, it's quite helpful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
I had a very similar experience with internships. So all my internships at uni were catered towards research, because I thought I wanted to do a PhD after uni, and it turns out that I found it really boring. But the only way I would have known that is by experiencing it, right? So I think you should think of internships as just ways to get more experience and discover what you're interested in. So it doesn't really have to be a consulting internship, and you know, it doesn't have to be a linear path.
Yeah, that's very true. Sometimes it can be just as useful to find out what you don't like as what you do. So that's good advice there. We've got another question that's firstly directed at Arushi. When you said that you fly out to customers, are you talking about UK or international sites? Can you give some examples of where consulting has taken you in the world? And for other panelists as well, you might want to chip in if you've got on your experience of visiting clients too. So Arushi, if you want to start that one.
Yeah. So Agilysys predominantly has UK clients in the public sector. So when I say fly out, I mean, you know, flying out to Scotland or even like states of Guernsey. So that's or even taking a train. So it's not, I mean, we haven't expanded as of yet outside of the UK, but yeah, we still take flights though.
Yeah. Anybody else? Have you got any tips or experience you want to share about visiting clients?
Yep. I think for our clients tend to be pretty much all around Europe. So there have been past engagements in Spain, in Denmark, and there's quite a lot of opportunity now to travel to the Middle East and things like that as well. So, and on the engagement I'm currently on, as Arushi mentioned, there's a lot of people flying in just from Northern Ireland and so Belfast and Dublin. So they used to travel in on the Mondays and then go back on the Thursdays. So there's quite a lot of travel, not just from, you know, internationally, but even just people coming down from Manchester or Birmingham or Belfast as well. So you could be going all over the place.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth noting that consultancy almost inevitably requires travel. So I spent the first 4 years with Arcadis seconded into Manchester Airport, but actually I was employed to work in London, and by a quirk of circumstances lived in Newcastle. So there was a lot of travel, and you know, my colleagues, a lot of them flew up from London, and sometimes they had other jobs elsewhere in the world. And you know, depending on the size of your company, it increases the opportunities to travel. But inevitably you will be traveling, and if that's something you want to do, then consultancy is a very good option.
And just to add a potentially a different point of view, so a lot of consultancies will be seconded to other clients, and a lot of your travel is going to those clients. Within my sector, clients generally sort of come to us with a question, and our travel is mostly related to trying to answer their question. So within Good Business, we do projects that involve market research, understanding attitudes around social issues or a challenge that a client is facing. So within Good Business, as part of my projects, I've done market research, so mostly focus groups in the US, Germany, across the UK. And then the other side that I do is in implementation of projects. And we run behaviour change campaigns in sub-Saharan Africa. So I've travelled to work with partner agencies in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Uganda, and worked with marketing agencies there to deliver projects. So yeah, there's kind of two ways in which you can have a lot of travel. One is to visit and work with clients directly, and another way is to try to implement or find out more about the solutions that you can offer.
Great, thanks, Jenny. Right, so we're going to roll a few questions from the student audience into one now. So this is for everybody on the panel. Did you find it challenging to adapt into a new consultancy role straight out of university? And was it more challenging if your degree background was not aligned to business or strategy? Don't know if somebody wants to go first or.
Should I jump in on this one?
Yeah, thanks.
So I think I'm correct. I'm the only arts graduate on the call, from the panelists, that is. So possibly had the furthest, certainly given I work for an engineering firm, had the furthest to go to change disciplines. But I'd encourage you not to see it as something that's off-putting. Actually, I know that Arcadis was looking for people from different backgrounds because they want different perspectives. They want the skills and, you know, the different ways of working that different disciplines bring. I mean, the skills that I have from history mean that I'm quite familiar with taking the slightly, you know, the messy insights you get from client conversations and synthesizing in something that makes sense. But actually, when I'm in a certain project context, I work quite closely with someone from a more conventional engineering background, and you know, they deal with different information differently. And so those different perspectives that we bring, the different skill sets, they're actually quite powerful. Clearly not every firm will need, you know, they're not going to want everyone to be a historian or vice versa, but actually there are definitely opportunities there. And yeah, certainly my firm and many others are actually looking for that diversity of background because it makes them better at what they do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Peter. Oh, sorry, Davina, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jenny, go ahead.
So I came from a science background and actually started a PhD at King's College London but dropped out when again, I found it totally boring after a year. So then I had to really think about where my interests lie, and that's how I came to sort of responsible business and its potential to do some, I suppose, good in the world. And absolutely, I was, as Peter says, I was hired because I was slightly different. So I was really good at handling large data sets, which is really relevant for those market research projects or behavioural campaign projects where you collect a lot of data on attitudes and beliefs that the public might have, and analysing those and producing insights that can be used for reporting. And I work in an office where there are historians, people with English degrees, people from advertising backgrounds, pure business strategy backgrounds. I think I'm the only scientist for now, but I definitely agree with Peter that sort of diversity of background is what makes consulting companies sort of really successful and work really well, because they operate most effectively when there is a diversity of perspectives in the room.
Great. Davina, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think just to reiterate, I think that there's, within the consulting sort of sector of working, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I don't think that there is a desired degree, a desired sort of background. I think, and it's definitely easy to see why we may think that, oh, if I come from a science background, what are my qualifications to perform a consulting role? But in this case, what might be perceived as inexperience might be your best advantage. You're going into a job, into a role with no perceived notions about how you should behave, how you should be looking at data, and things like that. So I think it's more what you take from your degree and your experience at university, your experience with work, your interactions with people, that will be your greatest advantage when you come into consulting. I think as long as you're open-minded, you're really willing to learn and keen to learn, I think those are things that you can pick up in any degree or in any path of life. I think I'll just reiterate the point that at Accenture, I've worked with people that have come from a teach first background, people that have worked in the government, people that have got history degrees, art degrees, language degrees. So yeah, I think there's no, desired sort of background to come into consulting.
Great, thanks, Davina. So just to follow on from that question, this is for the whole panel again, what would you say are the core skills your firm or area of consultancy are looking for in particular?
I'll go first. So I think the key skills they would be looking for are, first of all, your willingness to learn, because I think in consulting, every day is a school day. Every day you're learning something new. You're moving with the trend in technology or just the way the world is changing. So that's number one. Number two is from, I think, any of the course you do, you need to have those problem solving skills. So just how you think things through, how the way you approach things, just having a methodical thinking in the way you do things. That's definitely one skill that you need to apply for problem solving. And number three, I think, would be communication, because every day you're dealing with clients, and it would be really good if you're able to communicate what you're thinking and understand and listen to them as well. So those are the three skills we look at in my firm.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? Yeah, Peter.
I think I'd add teamwork, or the ability to work with others to that list as well. The biggest difference I noticed from going from university to the work environment and consulting was that you have colleagues, and actually when you're studying you don't have colleagues, you have fellow students, and yes, you might do group work occasionally, but it's generally quite an individual process, whereas particularly when you're starting off in a company, you're part of a much larger process, and you're doing possibly multiple bits or possibly just one bit, but it's part of a bigger whole, and there's all sorts of complicated dynamics and interactions, and the ability to, you know, interact and navigate and succeed in that context is key. So actually, you know, if you've done other work, or if you've done team sports or any of these classic things, that's actually equally important, as you might argue more important than what your degree is.
And I'll also go on, just
sorry. I was going to say, I think adaptability as well, because I was going to allude to your point, Aswaria, about your projects being quite short in length, so 2 to 5 weeks. So it's quite a mixed bag of projects. You could be on an engagement for 5 weeks, 2 weeks, or in some cases 6 months, a year, 2 years. So you need to be adaptable enough to, you know, pick up and drop things and move on to something else. In that case, it's a bit different than your job in industry, where, you know, you're working towards that one goal of the firm. Here you'll be interacting with loads of clients who have different needs and different goals, and the project roles in itself that you will hold can be quite different from one project to another.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add time management to the list. I think that time is always like the biggest constraint that you have as a consultant. So knowing how to manage it the most efficient way is key. Because of course, you know, you can spend 10 more hours and get a better solution, but you don't have those 10 hours. So how do you use the time you have as well as possible? That's something that I think you also develop on the job. So it's not like everyone comes in and day one, you know, you're great at this and super efficient, but it really helps if you're mindful about it. And I think as a student, if you have, you know, are involved with things like societies, and you're also got your academics, you've got maybe part-time jobs, you get into the practice of managing many things at once. And that's something that really helps. And if you can show that during interviews and tell them how, you know, you manage time efficiently in your daily life, that really helps.
Great, that's all really good advice. So thinking back to your interviews, students asked, what kind of questions are asked during consultancy interviews? And did you need to learn any technical knowledge in advance?
I think, just speaking on Accenture, but I think generally it might vary for each consulting firm, the sort of format that they use. But for Accenture, there's not really a set sort of list of questions that I use. It's usually just a process for them to get to know you and your experiences, what you sort of feel like you want to get out of working for that consulting firm, why you think you're a good fit. I'd say in general, some of the questions you might expect would be some questions surrounding what you know about the company, why you think you would want to work for the company, what you understand about the role. So I would expect you to do some reading around why you would have wanted to work for that firm in the first place, and what the expectations might be for the role. But in general, I think it varies depending on the firms. I know Accenture has workshops that are sometimes implemented in their interviews, and that's more an interactive step that's been put in. So it's not a robotic sort of one-to-one interview process. But yeah, I think beyond the sort of typical what do you know about the company, what are your expectations of the role, why do you think you're a good fit, it could vary depending on different firms.
Yeah, and one thing to add to what Davina said, to totally agree with, is that the interview is your place to show your personality, and one of the only places in the application process where you will be able to do that. So for good business, we do multiple rounds when we hire someone. So we have CV and cover letters, where you are able to show a little bit of who you are in your cover letter. We then have a round of tests, and that's where any technical knowledge or technical sort of skill is where we hope to tease that out, and that is a really important step for us. So we have an Excel test, which is based around sort of data interpretation and trying to draw out insights. It's fairly simple, but a lot of people with very impressive cover letters do get stuck on it. So it's that's a really important part of the process for us. And there's also a written task, which is based around writing a persuasive argument as if you were presenting it to a CEO. And that really just gets to what someone previously mentioned, those communication skills, which are so important in consulting. And then by the time you get to the interview process, what I particularly look for, and I know what my directors look for, is just a bit of personality, trying to find out who you are, how you respond to face-to-face conversations, how articulate you are, and how, I think for us, it's sort of, we try to go through your previous experience, how you interpreted your previous experience, and again, try to get to that thoughtful point of, you know, which I think is really key for problem solving and, you know, just generally communicating, just trying to see how thoughtful you are and how aware of the issues surrounding the area of consulting that you want to go into. So for good business, we might ask you, you know, what's your favorite brand doing good things? Or, you know, what do you think is the most pressing social issue in today's society? So we try to get to sort of knowledge of current affairs rather than technical knowledge within the interview. But again, it's all about, the thing I'd like to emphasize is that it really is about showcasing your personality, not answering the questions in the right way.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering that an interview process is a two-way process. You don't have to take the job. I know it seems a bit odd to say it, but actually you're finding out about the company. So, you know, you shouldn't, or at least I wouldn't recommend going in and trying to be something you're not. You need to go in and be who you are. And if it doesn't work, if there isn't a fit there, then actually you're not going to be happy in the firm anyway. So you shouldn't work for them. And you know, if you're getting to the stage where you're getting into interviews, you will be offered jobs. So yeah, it's really important to be who you are. I know that I interviewed at several firms, and some they just didn't understand why I wanted the role, because they weren't looking for someone with my background. And actually, I wouldn't have been happy in those firms because they wouldn't have worked in the way that would have suited me. Whereas I ended up where I did, in a very good fit, and they were looking for someone with a different background, and actually their interview process was designed to tease out those sorts of issues. So actually theirs was, they did different things to some of the other interviews I'd been to, which enabled them to ask different questions, and so, you know, they got a different answer.
Great, that's really interesting, Peter. Anybody else got anything that you'd like to add to that one before I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I'd like to add that at LEK, we have some of the general things that Jenny and Davina spoke about in terms of competency questions at interviews. We have numerical tests in the beginning, but we also do have case interviews. So for case interviews, you are paired with someone who works at the firm, and they go through a project that they've worked on in the past, and you sit with them and you solve the problem with them in real time. So that's really interesting because firstly, it's really hard to fake it. You know, you really do have to just use your brain and be honest in what you're thinking. And also, if you enjoy that sort of thing, then you know that you'll enjoy the job as well. So it's a really good test to see if the job is right for you. And that's a very huge part of the process. And you do it in several rounds. So towards the end, you know, if you're good at solving cases, you know how successful you'll be in the job as soon as you get it, basically.
Okay, great, thanks, Aishwarya. Shall we move on to the next question then? So we've had a few questions from students about additional study. So firstly, are there any free courses that you would recommend to learn some basics about consulting before applying on online platforms like FutureLearn? Or secondly, a few students have asked if any of the panelists have studied for professional qualifications while on their graduate programme, and if so, how did you find balancing work and study commitments?
I'll go first. So as part of my graduate program, I was required to do some accounting qualifications just to bring my financial acumen up to speed. This is something that every consulting analyst goes through. Deloitte, as a Big Four, gets all of its consulting analysts to go on this certificate of management accounting course, and it really polishes the financial acumen. So it really brings people from various backgrounds on par with each other. And then obviously depending on the service line you're assigned to. So for example, I'm in technology consulting, and if I'm specializing in a certain software, then they will support you to go become an expert in that area. So I am currently undergoing training to get certified in SAP, and similarly others who are doing other sort of technology roles can get support to certify in those. In terms of what free courses you could be doing to prepare for a consulting role, I think, and this is something I did, was just get a bit of background knowledge on project management, and I did just a few simple Udemy free courses on what project management is, what a project plan is, what are the different stages in a project. So what user requirements are, how do you go off and document that for it to be built, what is testing, how do you test a system. So that's just some, and those are easy things to Google, right? Those are just that information is freely available out there. So there's no specific consulting skill you need to learn. Just maybe look up some project management skills and see how projects are run. And I think that'd be a good start.
Great, thanks, Shrishti. Did anybody else have?
I think, if I could add to that, I'd also recommend, I know for Accenture, and I'm sure it's the case for other consulting firms like Deloitte, there are sometimes case studies that you can find on the consulting firm's website. So I think a path that might be good for some background and context around that point of understanding, a project's life cycle, and looking at what a client sort of came to the company with their requirements, and what the consulting firm did to implement those and achieve the goal that was initially brought to them. If you read through case studies and sort of try and wrap your head around what the initial ask was, what the path that was chosen, and whether the sort of goal was achieved, that's always a good thing to look into. The more recent ones will be really helpful for you, especially before interviews as well. It shows that you have a genuine vested interest in what the company's been up to, and it can be really interesting to read about some of the new things that the consulting firm might have been up to, some of the new technologies that they might have been working on together with a client. So that's always a good path to go down. And with regards to training, Accenture is pretty great at investing in their staff for continual growth. We have funds set aside for resources to go ahead and sign up to different training. So we provide Amazon Web Services training, Agile, Scrum Master training, just to name a few. And with balancing that with work, you can actually, you'd need to request from your line manager and get approval, but you can have days that are dedicated to your training. So it would be communicated to your manager, to your team, to your client, that you wouldn't be available on certain days because you're out and you're completely dedicated to completing that training for 2 days, for example. But that is an ongoing thing, and the further up you go, you get more complex training and courses that are unlocked for you. So I know on the Accenture side, there is a heavy emphasis on continual improvement, investing in your own knowledge, investing in your own learning. So it is very much the sky's the limit. If you want to continue learning, then you're very much enabled to do so.
Great, that sounds inspiring. Sorry, Jenny.
Sorry, just one final thought about something you could do before you start the application process is really swat up on your Excel skills, because I think that's something that you will never escape in the world of work, is having to use Excel. And whether you come from a science background and you might be more familiar, there is sort of, with Excel, there is a whole range of tools and formulas that will make your life so much easier going forward in your role as a consultant. And if you're not from a science or data style background, but you're more in the arts, or you've done English or something like that, again, you will never evade Excel. So I know when I was doing my PhD at King's, there was a free 2-day Excel course that was offered. So I think it would be worthwhile looking at whether Manchester University offers something similar. If not, there will be some online courses about getting to grips with Excel and specific functionalities within it, like VLOOKUPs and pivot tables that you won't use every day, but when you use them, they will save you a lot of time. And the good thing is, like, your directors will think a task takes you 5 days and it takes you 3 hours, and they'll never know. So you can get to grips on other parts of your workload. So yeah, I heavily recommend Excel training, whatever background you come from.
On the topic of Excel, I think there's also a few free certifications you can do. I'm not sure if they're free actually, but I know that Microsoft, you can do some certifications for Office. And besides these sort of skills, I'd also recommend that you be aware of what's happening in the world of business. I think it could be something as simple as reading the headlines in the Financial Times every day, but things like that will definitely help you in interviews, especially when they ask you, what do you think is going to be the biggest trend in the next 5 years in a particular industry. It's always really helpful just to show that you have an understanding and awareness of what's happening in the world.
Great, thanks everyone. So this is quite a timely question, but how has would you say that the consulting industry has been impacted by a coronavirus outbreak? And for example, how has that impacted how you work with clients, or how you use virtual problem solving tools as you can't work together with your team? Does anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take that question. Yeah. So surprisingly, actually, I think in like consulting, or maybe just Agilicis, it hasn't been that bad with the COVID situation, more because clients are trying to move into a more digital way of working. And well, obviously now there's no traveling involved because you can't because of the rule. So you have to adopt those digital platforms. And now clients are seeing it as a way of, they don't have to spend that much money on expenses and things like that. They see that, the costs are going down, but they're getting the value for money. And yeah, so that way it's not been too bad for my industry in business change. With regards to the work, I mean, yeah, it was in the beginning, it was a bit challenging just trying to adopt, working virtually. So we've tried things like, keeping our video on so we can see, the faces, and try and make it more easy to communicate and just see people's expressions and things like that, which has been quite helpful. I mean, it's a bit tricky in workshops when you have like a whole bunch of clients and, you want to get opinion from everyone. But the features like the hand raising you can raise your hand in, like, for example, Microsoft Teams. So people take turns and people don't speak over each other. But it's just that trying to get that balance of, how many people you speak to in that setting, and, just trying to limit the amount of meetings you have and try to get more done on emails, and even if it's like using things like Microsoft Forms and things like that to try and get data from clients. So that's how I've seen that working.
Yeah, I think the changes brought about by coronavirus and restrictions, and they've exacerbated existing trends in the sector. So, I mean, if you think back 20 years ago, certainly my firm, almost everyone would be working either in the office or seconded to a client site, and you need to be there 5 days a week. Now, I mean, the movement already was to have more remote working because it gives you more flexibility and it's also cheaper. And actually, what the last couple of months have demonstrated is that you can make it work. Yes, certain things are harder and you probably want to go back to face-to-face meetings for certain things, but actually the list is relatively small, and that changes how the company works and it changes how people interact, and it brings opportunities with it. I mean, where I'm working at the moment, I'm based in, well, I live in Newcastle, I work in Manchester, and the project I do is down in the southeast, and that's not a problem. And I've got colleagues from all over, and none of them are having to commute. So it's definitely changing how we work, but it's not, I think it's changes that were already happening to a large extent.
Great, thanks, Peter. Has anybody else got anything they want to add to that point? Or
I think working from home, as we've heard, yes, there has been certain changes in how people are working in terms of, you can't go to someone's desk and ask a question. It's all via virtual communication tools, and there's a lot of tools, right? There's Microsoft Teams, there's Zoom, there's quite a lot of ways to be in touch with each other. But yes, from a personal perspective at least, you do lose a sense of human touch to it almost if you don't make that effort to turn on your video. And I say that because on last Friday we had a little team meeting over Zoom, and I kid you not, I had not seen some of the faces that I had been speaking to for 3 months. So I've been speaking to someone for 3 months. I had a picture of what they looked like, and they did not look anything like it. So it just goes to show that you're really you do miss out on that human element. So companies, at least in Deloitte, were making additional efforts to make sure that that human touch is maintained, whether it's through virtual team socials or through mental health champions, and check-ins with your team leads, etc. So having those, putting in that extra effort to sort of bond with people, and make sure, because a lot of people are now working at home. It's different conditions, some have childcare responsibilities, etc. So making sure everyone is in the optimal space, and is able to do what they need to efficiently. I think a lot of resources are being put into that as well by companies.
Great, thanks. So let's see if we can squeeze, it's almost coming up to 1 o'clock, so see if we can squeeze in one final question if we all keep the answers extremely brief. I'm going to ask all the panelists, in one sentence, what do you enjoy most about your role? I'll start with Shrishti.
The speed. Everything turns around really quickly.
Jenny?
How varied it is. No 2 days are the same.
Peter?
Yeah, I go for variety as well. It's always interesting.
And then Aishwarya?
Yeah, the fact that I'm never bored.
Davina?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Arishi, if you
Go ahead.
Uh,
Go ahead.
just dealing with different personalities every day.
And Davina, sorry about that.
No problem. For me, it would be if you embrace challenges, you will always have an opportunity to learn something new. Always.
I think the takeaway from that last question is then that the world of consulting is extremely varied. So sounds like it.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah. All right then. I think it's because it's 1 o'clock. I think we'll definitely make that the last question. So just want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today and taking time out of their busy schedules to answer all the student questions. So I don't, as the student microphones are turned off, but if this was an in-person event, you'd be getting we'd ask the students to do a big round of applause. So I'll give you all myself. That's Kim as well.
Yeah, just to say a big thank you from me as well. And once the webinar ends, students, you'll be welcome to share your feedback with us, which we really appreciate. There's an opportunity for that in there for you to say thank you to the alumni today as well, which we'll pass on to them. And as we said at the start, there were a lot of questions today that were very specific about maybe your own situation and asking one of the alumni panelists for some help or some guidance. So you may well want to reach out to them on LinkedIn afterwards, but you're also more than welcome to book a guidance appointment with the Careers Service to explore your kind of individual situations a bit further after the event today as well. Do you want to say anything else on there?
Yeah, just to the alumni panelists, this is a new way of working for us as well. We usually do these events in person, and some of you have been to our in-person events, which we appreciate, and hope that when we can do things in person again, that we'll see more of you come back and join us on campus. But as this is a new way of working for us, if you've got any feedback about how the panel went today, I'd be really happy to receive it. But just to say thank you ever so much again, and yep, I hope you have enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks ever so much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, bye.